Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Black Mental Wellness Lounge. This is Brandon Johnson. I'm super excited to be back and to have this conversation today. And I'm going to pull up my guest here, Dr. Alfiee. First of all, thank you so much for jumping on and being a part of this.
My pleasure. Of course. Anything for you, Brandon. You know we tight. We tight like that, nephew.
Listen, I was just about to say that this is my auntie in this space 100%. Um, we always talk about like giving people flowers. Like, I definitely want to just start real quick without being super embarrassing, but just to give you your flowers and say thank you for all the work that you do, all the things that you're a part of. Like, I literally look up to you in this space, and I wouldn't be able to do the stuff that I do without the roles and things that you have paved and continue to pave, for us in this Black mental wealth space. So I just wanted to get that out publicly and put that out there.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. We can never hear too much. And if I don't have people like you out here doing the work as well, if we don't have each other out here doing the work, it can be such a lonely, difficult place, especially when we're talking about Black folks' mental health
Hmm.
specifically. People of color in general, but those of us who are Black and identify as Black specifically, it's been a long time coming for this conversation. And I'm just really happy to have millennials and Gen Z, young people like you who are in this space, who are committed to it, and who have platforms like this, who create platforms like this to really promote the work. So I'm gonna give you your flower. I'm gonna take my flowers, but I'm gonna give you yours right back.
We're gonna split the flowers up. We're
There we
gonna
go. There you go. That's how we do it.
absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. So I wanted to step back. I know you do so much. You're so amazing. So I want to give you an opportunity just to share with our viewers a little bit about Dr. Alfie.
Sure. So thank you for that. So I've learned to not be humble, but to also I have a girlfriend. Her name is Alex Geertz. And Alex, actually, it's a white sister who taught me about what it means to stand in and own my own power. So that's
Mm,
the spirit with which I, introduced myself in that spirit and honoring my mother who's deceased. It'll be 15 years in September.
wow.
And just mama was one of those people I admired her so much when I was a little girl and all throughout my life. But she was a person who I feel like always owned her power, always. And even when I couldn't, I felt like sometimes she would own her power on my behalf. And so I try to be real intentional with that. So for me, the work that I do, again, my nephew Brandon is all in the space of mental health. I've been at this I was calculating the other day, since I finished graduate school, I've been in this space for 25 years. But since I really got into it, it's probably been closer to 30. So I really got into it senior year at Howard University. Ooh, ooh,
Hey,
you know.
HBCU.
That's it. That's it. All
Hey,
day. It's the only way to go. I told my kids, when you leave here, it's not which college, it's which HBCU. I'm gonna let you have some little choices. You can pick some PWIs, but you going to an HBCU. I'm just saying.
that's right.
So everybody in my family, my spouse is a J State alum. Like my dad's Norfolk State, my brother's A&T and Kentucky State. My mama was Mississippi Valley State. So we are big on HBCUs in this family. I love them all. Um, so that's really where the seed was planted. And what I do now, I'm a psychologist, have a PhD in a field called counseling psychology. People always just brush all of us as clinical psych. No shade, no shade. But my degree is in counseling psychology, which was one of the earlier fields that really got into the concept of honoring and celebrating diversity. So before diversity was a thing, I have to be honest,
Mhm.
counseling psych was a space where everybody was really celebrating diversity. So fast forward to what I do now. There are really a couple of areas where I do work. I'm a scientist by training. I'm in a field called mental health disparities research, which Brandon, because we, do some of the work that you do and, with the different hats that you wear. We're on a new committee together, I think. I'm in that space as a scientist. And there's so few of us who are Black scientists who've been federally funded. We talk about that another day because that's a whole like 2 hours. The
Listen.
struggle is real. But that's my primary hat. And then, I have to say, just the way the universe worked, I did not anticipate the media work, but
Mhm.
for some reason it kind of crept out and then it just went like straight up. And so doing a fair amount of media work that I do now really always trying to bring my science to it. And the other big piece is I founded an organization, which you have been so gracious. And I have to tell you, like, just the bomb. You just like, you are just amazing. The support that you provided for us with NAMI. And that is through my organization called the AAKOMA Project. And I founded the AAKOMA Project. I currently really run AAKOMA Project. And the AAKOMA Project is really about uplifting and supporting the mental health of our young people. So Gen Z, millennial, but also supporting their parents, baby boomers, grandparents, and Gen X like me, parents, in really centering and addressing the mental health needs of our young people. So I probably am forgetting a bunch of other, I'm on 11 million daggone boards and committees, and I'm on the board of Crisis Text Line. I'm a program board member for this great coalition called, and I got a big one. If I don't say it, he gonna kill me. For something called the Mental Health Coalition, which was founded by Kenneth Cole. And then the other big one that's very relevant for what we're talking about is I'm a thought leader and consultant. Don't even ask me how long it took me to understand what thought leader meant, because I had no idea for a long time. But anyway, thought leader for an organization founded by Charlemagne and Guy called the Mental Wealth Alliance, of which the AAKOMA Project is a member. So all that stuff, and probably some older down for you. And I'm a mama, and I got a spouse, and I take care of my daddy. And so, yeah, all of that.
All of that. All of that.
All of that.
Listen, but
All of
yeah,
them.
I feel like, so like all the time, like I'll be looking and doing something, and just like you said, there's another committee that I was looking through the people, and I was like, second name on it was yours, and I was like, hey, this is it. I feel like that happens so much. Or I'm watching a clip of like CNN or something like that. I'm like, okay, I got that.
There she go today.
But it's awesome to watch. Like I know you said you weren't anticipating like that media piece of it, but to have a Black woman who has specialized in this and has done this and dedicated her life and her career to this, it's so great to see you be able to speak on behalf of us. And I think one of the cool things too is that you're able to talk in any room, right? So like if you're on a podcast, if you're on national TV, if you're within the community at at a church, like whatever, you're able to put that there, and that's so needed, for us and our people. And so, as you talked about, like you've been in this space now, close to 30 years at this point. So, like, what sparked Dr. Alfiee to be like, this is the path I'm going to? Because there's so many people like that watch this who are, in college or
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
thinking about like, should I go into the field? Like, I have some feeling about it, but what ultimately drove you to want to get into this space?
Oh, that's such a great question. I love every time I get to answer it, and I always get teary eyed every time I am asked the question. Because it just, there's so many layers to it. So I'll make it brief. And I remember the last time I answered this question. Now I'm on spoiler alert. I'm gonna name drop, but it was very meaningful to me because it was a white person who asked. And the white person actually was a white person and a Middle Eastern brother, Rainn Wilson from The Office and
Yeah.
like everything else, and Dr. Reza Aslan. And I think Reza is Iranian by birth or grew up in the United States. And so when they asked, like a white guy and a Middle Eastern brother to ask and really be interested in it, is
Mhm.
deeply meaningful because it gives me the opportunity to talk about stuff. Brandon, what I'm gonna say, you're gonna be like, yeah, been there, done that. Like that's your experience, even given the age gap that we have. So
Yeah.
the more things change, the more they stay the same. And so for me, it was really about in my home, I had a lot of love and support, like a lot. Like my parents, I'm not saying it was idyllic and it was perfect. It was perfect for me. And I had what I needed. Emotionally. And as a dark skinned Black woman, that's all relative, right? Because my African brothers and sisters be like, child, please, you ain't dark. Right? Some of them be like, that's y'all Black Americans with that ain't dark. Let me show you dark.
Right,
And so, right, you got a little bit of melanin. I got a lot of melanin. So,
right.
but back in the day, right, in the 80s, growing up in southeastern Virginia, I'm from Virginia Beach. I'm from the same, literally, all of us grew up in about a 5 mile radius of each other. Pharrell Williams and Chad Hugo, Chad's Filipino, everybody, the Neptunes, and
Right.
then Timbaland. Timbaland literally grew up probably less than 3 miles from where I grew up.
Oh,
So it was that area. And we're all within a couple years of each other in terms of age. And so in that back in the day, when you see Pharrell talk about skateboard P,
mhm.
that was not a thing for the Black kids to be. I was a little bit into skateboarding. I was more into surfing. So you can already hear like the juxtaposition. So I'm a black woman, I'm a chocolate girl. I had a hard time fitting in around that. Then I was a high achieving black kid, right?
Mhm.
Just like I know you were. And so when you grow up in a white environment as a high achieving black child, back then, I'm sorry to say it, but a lot of our white brothers and sisters, they don't know what to do with us. They did
Right.
not know. And so we were, it was a lot more smart black kids, but it was like eight of us. I just was telling somebody this story yesterday. There were literally eight of us black kids who are
Mhm.
all the only ones in all the advanced classes, right? So we were the
Right.
gifted and talented black kids. And that was isolating. So I know for me, it was that. So the only place I had respite and refuge was home with my folks and my dad's buddies, my uncles. They were like, two of them are deceased, Mr. Jewell and Mr. Brown, my godfather. But they were so good to me. They always told me I was beautiful. They always told me I was smart. They were like, baby, whatever you want to do, you can do it. We believe in you. We know you got it. And so I wanted to be able to give children that, because there's so many
Right.
kids who don't get any of that, especially if they're kids of color. So that's the passion that I have for it. My godmother, I think the real turning point for the specific field, you can hear these things of family and loved ones, and that's
Right.
the stuff that people don't even have to say anything to you, but if they show you,
Mm.
sometimes without even telling you, they're giving you permission. So my godmother's name is Dr. Mona Thornton. She's a professor in North Carolina right now. I think it's North Carolina Wesleyan, and she's a EDD from UMass Amherst in early childhood education. And she was a person who was like, Alfie, you should think about maybe PhD. And I was like, I didn't know. And she was
Right.
like, yeah, you go that route. And so she sort of planted the seed when I was 10 years old.
Mm.
Believe it or not, I was 10. And it just sort of stayed with me. And then over time, it evolved and it grew. And I met other people along the way who supported me. But the crux of it, my husband told me, I don't know, earlier in the spring, he said, Alfie, when I laid out the big world domination vision, which my girlfriend Solomay Tibabu tells me, she was like, yeah, world domination, Dr. Alfie. I'm like, yes, yes, world domination. It was, and he said it, healing humanity. That's my passion, healing humanity.
That's major, and two, like to watch those seeds that got planted so young, like to come to fruition, like that's powerful, and that's again more of what we need to see, like in our community with our young people.
100%. And it was definitely not linear. So I tell people,
Mhm.
don't have this expectation. I'm sure you have similar stories. Don't have this, because you got all them letters behind your name. It took time and effort and work to get those letters behind your name, right? Those certifications and those extra degrees and all that kind of thing. And so the path is not like this, right? Especially if you're of color. I tell young people, y'all see social media, some of us older people too, and we get it twisted. We think
Absolutely.
people went just like this, came out of college, shoot. No, that's what they showing you. But what they're not showing you is like the 300 no's it took to get to that
Absolutely.
yes, right? So
Absolutely.
we can get into all this stuff about disparities in funding.
Mhm.
That's part of the reason I left academia, because the same stuff that I do now literally is identical, except the media piece, to what I was doing when AAKOMA Project was my research lab at Duke Psychiatry first, and then at Georgetown Psychiatry. We just got to tell the truth and shame the devil.
Yeah,
And
right.
being in those environments and not having support for what I was doing, right? Anytime people want to know what it's like, I encourage you to go look at the whole Nicole Hannah Jones saga from Chapel Hill. That's
Yeah,
Black folks in academia in a nutshell. I mean, that just condensed
absolutely.
it all down. That's what we deal with. And so you can't flourish in environments that are not built for you to flourish. So you got to find the space that will allow you to flourish. And sometimes that is in an academic setting. Sometimes that in the federal government. Sometimes that is in a professional setting where you work for other people. But sometimes it's
Mhm.
not. And if it's not, I think it's important for us to be honest with ourselves, be careful and thoughtful, and plan for how can I get to a space that's going to honor and value and support me. And I can say that Gen X, an older adult, I didn't say that when I was 30. I didn't know.
Right.
So that's my message to young people is keep working until you find that space that values, supports, and really sees you. That's important.
That is so important, and like you said, so many of us have been in those spaces, where it hasn't, which is goes back to the HBCU stuff. I did both. I did HBCU first and went PWI, and I can tell you, Morgan State, which I have my colors on today, but Morgan State did for me what my PWI could never do. Right? Because my professors could see I was under my potential for a while, and my advisor pulled me up one day and said, "You got to stop." He said, "I need you on it," and those things are life changing for us. And so, yeah, like I said, look. We can have. I'm gonna have you back on talk about the academia and the research part. We could listen. I wasn't even in it, and I fuss about it all the time because it influences how we look at evidence based practices, what we got out for here for our young kids. It's a lack of it, but we know where it comes from. It's systemic. But look, I'm not. I'm gonna
You
keep my
good. Keep
keep my
preaching. You good. I'm telling you, like you said, your PWI could never,
never.
right? My PWI could never. They can never approximate what Howard gave me. And I think every Black person, or even people of color, who ever attended a HBCU, probably can speak to that one professor or that one moment when they got snatched up, right? I know who snatched me like a ponytail. Dr. Austin. She was not playing with, God rest her soul. Dr. Letty, I couldn't stand her.
Yeah.
But that's the model. Once I got out of school and became a professor for those 20 years that I was a professor, my family would tease me like, "Yeah, you getting your Dr. Austin." I'm like, "You daggone right," because that, you know what I'm saying? Because
Right,
she
right.
helped me see the potential. She helped me see the promise. She's like, "Alfie,
Absolutely.
like just like your professor did for you, you're now functioning at your highest level." And I still have a letter from her that I wrote right after I finished graduate school. When I finished everything, I wrote her a letter, and she wrote me back. And
Oh,
she just was like, "It was nothing that I did, baby." And I was just like,
oh my
it
God.
was because there was something in you and you were willing to allow me to pull it out.
Mm,
And I was like, oh, and I still have that. I got it. I think it's hanging on my vision board somewhere, but
that's
that's
beautiful.
that's what kids need. That you talk about mental wellness,
Yeah.
creating spaces like this. This is what you're doing, Brandon. You're creating a space for us to be able to be safe and seen, heard, and valued. And that's so important. This is healing. Just having these conversations is healing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Man, yeah. So look, you got me thinking about my old professor. I was like, I haven't emailed her in a while.
Email her. If it
Yeah.
pops in your head, email her and just say, "Hi, I just want to see how you doing and thank you." You know what I mean? Like
Oh
people
yeah.
value that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I've definitely, told her that before. I said, This doesn't happen without her. It doesn't. I can remember the conversation. It was at 8 a.m. on an 8 a.m. before. No, it was 7 something. It was before my 8 a.m. class. And she met with me and she was like, I gotta push you. Like I need you to do more. And I'll never forget it. And
Ugh.
the rest is history. But
And
this
that's practice-based evidence. That right
listen,
there.
right.
Practice-based evidence. Why? Because she articulated a goal.
Hmm.
She mirrored you and she came to you with an expectation. And what did you do? You rose to the expectation that she set because she was speaking to you from a place of being empathic. She was speaking to you from a place of empowering you. She was teaching you, here's a tool. The tool is stop functioning below your potential and
Absolutely.
let me show you how to get there. And then, like, she followed through. To me,
Right.
that's the stuff, right? That's cultural.
Yeah.
To me, that is cultural because I've never had any of my white professors pull me to the side in that kind of way. Right? You
Mm-mm.
understand? They did other things, but there's something
Yeah.
cultural about, nah, baby, we got to get this together. And just
Abs-
one on one having a conversation with you and articulating for you, this is the vision that I have for you. And then you seeing that brown skin, thinking, okay, right?
yeah.
That all of that mirror, all of that. So to me, that's a perfect example of practice-based evidence that we have to take and build into, which you already do and I already do naturally because it's cultural, into
Right.
the practices that we use, in my case, with our young people.
Yeah, and this is, and what you're saying is a really good point because that cultural piece, our elders can pull us up and talk to us in a way that's going to motivate. Like when they say certain stuff, like the ground gonna move. Like when they say certain things culturally, you get yourself, you like, all right, okay, like
Yes,
you're going to receive it,
yes,
and that's what we need to do, like embracing our communities, and having, the answers are already there, which again, preaching to the choir, but the answers are already there,
yes,
within our communities. And so that pulls me to a good point about you developing and starting the AAKOMA Project.
yes,
You went out from, academia, whether, putting the walls up, wasn't allowing you to do what you
100%,
do in the way that you needed to do it. And so you
100%.
created this AAKOMA Project. Can you give us some more, and again, I'm privileged and honored just to be connected and working with you all, in this space. But let our viewers know more about the AAKOMA project and what the AAKOMA project's been doing.
Of course. Thank you for the opening. So we're at akomaproject.org, AAKOMA project. All that's one word. And it comes from the West African Adinkra symbol, AKOMA, which is one A on the front, one A on the back, AKOMA. And the symbol is a heart. So when you see our logo, what you notice is there's a big heart in the middle for the O. And that's because AAKOMA at its core is really about creating that welcoming space for all of our young people, right? And so, what does that look like? How do we operationalize that? And so, that welcoming space around mental health is about three key features of our work. We raise consciousness, all in the space of young people's mental health. We empower people, and we change and shift systems. So, those things are really about in communities of color. We are inclusive. We have an inclusive tent. We work very hard at justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. I like Jedi, so that we can create a welcoming environment that allows people to feel like they belong. As both Brandon and I have shared, we've too often functioned in spaces where people didn't make us feel like we belong, right? And so this idea of people talk about EDI and belonging. Belonging, I think, is what I feel, right? That's the response I have to what other people do to create an environment that is welcoming. So as a founder, as a like an organization builder, I have control over creating a welcoming environment. And that's what we try to do virtually and in vivo with the AAKOMA project. So through AAKOMA, we are rooted in evidence that we create. We create the evidence, right? I've been doing this a long time. I have a master's degree in health services research, which is basically a master's degree in clinical trials, right? And so I know clinical trials, soup to nuts. I also know community-based participatory research. And so AAKOMA is really our effort to blend those two. We have a couple things upcoming. We're building something called Team AAKOMA, which is our adolescent and young adult, more than an advisory board, but it's like a real engaged board of young people who are going to help us do our work. We have subject matter experts who work with us, and it's all about making sure that everybody who might come into contact with a young person of color, inclusive of gender identity, LGBTQ young people, people with disabilities, our immigrant young people, inclusive of all of those points of diversity. We want all of our young people to know, and this is the thing we always say, everyone deserves an opportunity for optimal mental health. So hashtag optimal mental health, that's what we're about at AAKOMA Project.
Listen, I don't know if people know the power in the statement of we are evidence based with the evidence that we create ourselves.
Eh,
I don't know if people understand just how powerful that is. Just again, getting into that research thing and where the funding goes, who gets funded, disproportionately, and how with our black researchers, they're not getting funded, which means interventions for our people aren't getting funded. The research that's needed to build capacity within communities isn't getting there. And so for a place like a coma to be working and doing this work and then applying it directly with working with communities, working with faith-based organizations, like doing CBPR, like that is awesome. And it weaves through like the middle person, right? You don't
yes,
have to like wait for the right funding opportunity or the right
no,
support, the right sponsorships. You're creating that with a coma.
yes, yes. And we are so grateful to, excuse me, the people who believe in us. It's a multiracial coalition of people who been attached to us, right? So one I have to say is my champ. Two I have to say have really been my champions as white people are Kenneth Cole, the designer who runs the Mental Health Coalition. He and Nicole Moriarty is one of the senior program level people, just decided, Dr. Alfiee and the AAKOMA Project, we like y'all. And they have been super, right? Not even in a condescending or like a patronizing way. I feel like they've been genuinely supportive of promoting our work through their platform. And then the other person who's been, and this is public, so you can find it in different places on the web, is Pivotal Ventures. And Pivotal Ventures is an organization run by Melinda Gates. And so, these are folks who decided, like 15 years ago, I couldn't get senior level people. Literally, Brandon, the same stuff I'm doing now. They don't want to hear it. Like, and
Yeah.
I will tell you, this is one of the secrets. Now, I probably shouldn't have done it, but the only reason I got that second master's degree in clinical trials was so I could walk in the room and be articulate about the stuff that they know. Right. So you know how they say you use the master's tool to dismantle the master's house. I had to get my tool. Right. And so that's the path that I chose to get the tool. So nobody can talk to me about clinical trials and say stuff that I don't know. Right. So area under the curve, what phase of trial is it? What time to event? All that, I know that stuff. And so it was important for me to know that because I was trying to make it work in those circles. And then those circles just decided, we don't want you to make this work. And yes, I said, okay. It took me a while, but won't just like
Yeah.
that. Right. I was like, okay, I'll go make it work out here. And
Mhm.
to your point, to celebrate all of us who are out here fighting and ringing the alarm about we've got to have evidence that resonates with our communities. We
Absolutely.
have to build from the evidence that already exists. People, it's a lot of everybody got a big mama, especially down south in their community.
Right.
There's something about what Big Mama does that
Mhm.
supports all the kids in the neighborhood. Why wouldn't we build some kind of intervention around that? And what did it turn into? Those friendship benches over in on the continent of Africa, right? It's a African brother psychiatrist.
Mhm.
Friendship benches. The grandmothers from the community literally sit on a bench. Now he's got evidence behind this. They tested it, and
Mhm.
people can just come. And the grandmothers have been given a little bit of training around cognitive behavioral therapy principles. You can go there another time, but I have my feelings. But anyway, so the concept of Big Mama, right, which is the same concept, Brandon, of your professor and my Dr. Austin, a
Right.
senior trusted person in the community where you can let your guard down and share some of the things that you're struggling with in a safe environment. That's what I call practice-based evidence. That is a form of evidence-based practice, but it's not something that we see enough of. And so us building it, I'm always like beating the drum, right? Signaling the clarion call. We create this stuff, right? We use other people's stuff too, but we're
Right.
a source. You come to us if you want some resources around Black folks and other people of color mental health.
I love it. I love it, and it's so critical right now too. When we talk about mental health and well being of you know people of color and young people of color, is it's been a time. Like, I mean, a real time. Like this past. I mean, for a while, but let's just say this past year and a half with the pandemic, with some of the public, murders of our people, some on camera, some not, but intense watching those things and economic strengths and changes and isolation and stuff like all at the same time. And now we're in this space of there's a variant, but we sending everybody back. Everybody's going back to school. My babies go back to school next week. So
Right, right, right. Ooh.
right, and too young to get vaccinated. Anyway, it's a whole thing. And so we got young people shifting back when we as adults in the world hasn't shifted back yet because it hasn't been safe. Some people not shifting back enough, some people shifting back too much. But depending on where you at right now. But there's a lot going on. Our young people are in the thick of it, and oftentimes they're the last people to be thought about when these
Yes.
decisions and stuff are being made. So, how, from your perspective, your vantage point, how can we support our young people as in a week or so they head back into school?
So I think it's a couple things. One is I think we want to make sure that we're keeping open lines of communication. It sounds like an empty platitude, but it's the truth. We've got to be able to communication is a key foundation for any kind of relationship, right? Open lines of communication, effective communication, direct communication, age appropriate, developmentally appropriate communication. So there's this great tool. I will just share it because I've helped to support it. I won't say help to develop it. I gave a lot of ideas around it, but I did not personally build it, called sounditouttogether.org. And that's something developed by the Ad Council. Literally, you can go to the page and look. One of the things now this is something I did kind of harp on, and to their credit, they took my advice. They started with a focus on Latinx, including Black Latinx and Black people, right? Black of the diaspora. That's
Right.
their focus. And so all of the images, the music, all of it right now is focused on primarily on those two groups, and they're going to expand. But this is where they started, and that resource gives parents a tool to help with open lines of communication, especially around emotional well-being and mental health. It's a great resource and it's all free. So that's one thing. And it has some great music on it. I tell everybody I recommend the one by his brother named Kamal and the little boy, because the little boy looks just like my son. But anyway, so open lines of communication. So once you have the open lines of communication, that becomes your tool to support and inculcate and build in safety into what's happening with your child. In other words, if you have open lines of communication, you can stress the importance of keeping on your mask, baby. Only
Mhm.
time I want that mask off is when you eat lunch, right?
Right.
Once lunch is done, put the mask back on. Why do we need to put it on, sweetie? Because we don't know what other people are doing, but we know what we do in this household. In the Johnson household, we are all about the community and we want to protect other people while we protect ourselves. But if you don't have open lines of communication, it's an empty admonition. You better wear that mask. So like
Right.
whatever, right? It's also in our behavior. So it's what are we doing to manage our own anxiety about re-emerging? Because so many articles about re-emerging,
Mhm.
quote after air quotes, because we ain't after
Right.
nothing, but re-emerging, right, as within this pandemic transition process. And so it's, are we wearing a mask when we go outside? Are we having conversations about washing your hands, using your hand sanitizer, whatever those things are that you're doing to keep yourself safe? Are you modeling that? So I think if you do those few things, and the final thing is regular check-ins with your kids. My favorite is something I learned when I was in graduate school, and it's called, and I learned it from this African principle based psychotherapy clinic that I worked at, where they used to run groups. And I think it was called Umoja. And it's weather reports. This can be any age group.
Mhm.
So weather reports are check-ins for feelings. So at the end of the day, this two part a two-part tip strategy, I should say. Check in with your kid and say, tell me the weather report for today, right? And then you educate them: sunny, cloudy, partly cloudy, rainy, thunderstorm, which is tied to feelings. It's really good for elementary school. And then the second thing is stop asking your kids, how was your day?
Mhm.
Especially these first couple of weeks. Instead, ask an open-ended question. You know this, Brandon. Ask
Yeah.
an open-ended question. Tell me something good that happened today. Tell
Mhm.
me something that you wish was different today. And how would you have made it different? That makes kids think. It's very hard to say fine, yes, and no, or yeah and no to those questions. So
Right.
those are some things I would encourage parents to think about and to try to build into their communication with their children.
Absolutely. Like those are great. Look, I'm sitting here like, okay, so I'm going to this. Like,
Oh yeah, that sounded out is awesome, and it's for tweens, like 10 to 14. But you can really use that's the focus. But you can use it with any age group. It's I love it. It's fantastic.
yeah, I'm definitely gonna check that out. And two, yeah, those open-ended questions definitely, changes. Kids will I'm find you to death, about anything. Like mine will
We did it, Brandon. We did it. Come on now, you know
100%.
we did it.
100%. My mother always used to flip out because she used to say, "What did you do in school today?" I'd be like, "Nothing." She'd be like, I know you did not do nothing the
Get her,
entire
mama. Get her,
right."
Mama Johnson. Girl, anybody got time?
Right. It's just, the thing to go to, and even now, like just asking the kids, like, like what are some of the things you felt today? Like, what are some of the, feelings or emotions you felt today? And again, like trying to get them to, get the vocabulary to, respond to that is critical. And you mentioned the parents. So now it's a lot of parents like being in this space and talking to other parents, they like, listen, I don't know how I'm gonna take care of myself, like when these babies go out, because like schools are still actively figuring out protocol. I know our kids' school is still trying to get all the tweaks together, and it's gonna be a lot of trial and error in getting this stuff right. And there's some parents that are just like, I'm overwhelmed dealing with myself, dealing with them, and now integrating them back. Is there any advice you would give to the parents themselves of younger kids or school age children, like to manage or take care of themselves during this time also?
100%. Three things I would say: put your mask on first, and I can explain what that means.
Mhm.
Curate your news, right? And be forgiving of yourself, right?
Mhm.
So, those three things. When you put your mask on first, that just means you got to make sure you're taking care of you before you take care of anybody else, including your children. If you're not functioning well, if the oxygen mask drops out of the plane, if you have the privilege of flying, you don't put yours on first, you can't breathe. So if you can't breathe, you losing oxygen to your brain, you can't think. How you gonna help that child? You can't,
Yeah.
right? Curate your news. Stop watching. Now, I'm not saying there's no place for news. You got to get your news, but you can't sit like people in my house who will remain nameless, but his initials are my dad, and watch an endless loop,
Yeah.
right? CNN, MSNBC, and then he said, I got to know what the enemy's doing, so he gonna watch Fox. Lord Jesus. And so, child, cannot. I'm not the one. So, I
Good.
ain't about that life. So, if you watch, right, it will freak you out because every day is something about kids getting sick. Some child down in Florida, somebody came and told me that who passed away within
Yeah.
the first month of school, got COVID and died, right? The 4 teachers, I think it was in Florida, who
Right.
got right. You can't consume all that stuff and still be functional, right? You can't.
Right.
It's just too hard. So curate your news. And then the last thing is be forgiving of yourself. You're gonna forget 1 and 2. You're gonna forget to do them,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's a conscious, active process. These are things we call active coping. You got to do this stuff and you got to practice it. And for those of us who are Black, I promise you, if you Gen X, for certain, nobody taught you that stuff when you were
Right.
growing up.
Absolutely.
Nobody. You put the, like Atlas, you carry the world on your back and just keep it moving, right? Because the ancestors, look, we know them stories. Yeah, our ancestors were enslaved, and if they can get through slavery, then you can deal with this, right?
Absolutely.
Another way that people talk around it is to talk about first world problems. A lot of immigrant families, right? Mental illness and mental wellness. Child, that's first world problems. We ain't got time for that. We too busy trying to work and strive, and immigrants get the job done. You got to take care of your mental health too. So I'm just saying, you're going to forget to do the first 2 things I said. Even when you do, forgive yourself, have a forgiveness practice. Real quick, my forgiveness practice I posted on Instagram yesterday. I take 3 really deep breaths. I place my hands over my heart and try not to hit my mic. And I say, I forgive you, Alfie, out loud. Right now, you got to go in the bathroom so people won't think you like having auditory and visual hallucinations. But
Right.
you forgive yourself out loud, and it's just a process of giving yourself a pause to reset, because sometimes you're going to get it wrong. So those are the things I would say quickly that I would encourage parents to do. There's so many more, but that's a place to start.
That is awesome, and I definitely can do better with that third one. So I'm gonna practice that. I'm definitely going to practice that, and get definitely get that to other people too, and point them to the video and be like, Auntie said that's what you need to do. So I appreciate. Listen, I could, we could talk forever, and
Yes, we could. Yes, we could.
and like I said, we'll have to get you back,
Of
for
course.
sure. But I want to give you an opportunity to let people know how to get connected to you, the work that you're doing, the AAKOMA Project, your podcast also, like make sure people get connected to all the things that you're doing.
Thank you so much. I'm glad you said podcast because I completely forgot because we're in between seasons. So
Right, right.
I haven't had you on yet, but we're building our list. So you will be on in season 3, without a doubt. Season 3, and the podcast is called Couched in Color. And it generally runs all together. We're on Libsyn, which means we're everywhere, right? But the better part of it, I think, is we're doing like you do, going into season 3. All 3 seasons, I've always had this vision of us being an audio and a visual podcast. And so we're on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel, Couched in Color with Dr. Alfiee. You just type in Couched in Color, it'll come up. That's one. So thank you for reminding me, because I always forget to mention the podcast, especially if we're not in filming. 2 is I'm on all platforms. The easiest place is to start at probably my Instagram page, which is DR. It looks like Droughty. My son's friends call me Droughty, right? The little friends. Can I say
Right,
this in a nice way? His little friends. Some of them not Black, because Black kids.
right.
Black kids ain't gonna do that. But anyway, because their parents is
Absolutely.
like, choke them.
Right.
But it's affectionate. They're sweet. I love the kids. They call me Droughty. So that's basically what it looks like. DRALFIEE, Droughty. So if you put that in, you'll bring up my Twitter page, Instagram, Facebook, which I'm not very good at. I don't use Facebook a lot, but stuff is getting posted regularly. Then I have a website that's Dr. Alfiee, which links from the Instagram page. If you go Instagram, if you have it, it will take you there. If you don't, start at dralfie.com. It'll take you everywhere else. And then finally, I'm everywhere, all social media. We're not on Snapchat yet. I don't know if we're ever going to get there, but AAKOMA Project. So K as in kite, OMA Project, AAKOMAproject.org, because we are a nonprofit. And I have 2 YouTube channels. One is Couched in Color. The other is a Dr. Alfiee YouTube channel, which has been less active, but those are all quick videos for people, somebody told me, a lot of people say, well, you put all these videos on Instagram with strategies, but what if I don't have Instagram? How can I get the videos? So
Mhm.
my social media manager at the time was like, put them on YouTube. So that's what we did. So you'll find literally nothing's longer than like 5 minutes where you get ideas for active coping, managing anxiety, managing burnout, that kind of stuff is on there. So those are all places you can find me, and you can also get in touch with me pretty much through most of those platforms.
That's awesome. And listen, if you forgot any of that, it'll all be in the description of this video.
Yay!
So
Yay!
that's my job, and you should look at the video right now as it gets posted. It all should be right there. But
Yay!
um, again, Dr. Alfiee, I can't thank you enough. I appreciate you. I appreciate what you bring to our community, what you've done and the things that you've accomplished. And I just appreciate you just as a person and as someone who has served as a mentor from afar. I've watched, you incited your work and all sorts of stuff. But it's definitely great to be connected with you all and the AAKOMA Project and doing work with you all. But again, thank you so much for jumping on the lounge today. I appreciate it.
Of course. And Brandon, you are a light in this world. You are a good young brother who's out here trying so hard to do the right thing. And I'm so deeply appreciative. And it truly has been my pleasure to be here on your pod. I remember when you started, I was like, okay, fam, I see you with your YouTube channel. And lots of us are very supportive of your work from afar and me up close as well. So thank you for everything you do. You just are a phenomenal young person. And that makes our work, those of us who are a little bit older, makes our work easier because we know it's people coming behind us who gonna carry the torch. So thank you.
I appreciate it. And thanks everyone for checking us out. And we'll be back again soon.